Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Okay, I want you to try and hold two very different images in your head for a second.
All right, I'm ready.
First, picture the bottom of the ocean. It's dark, it's cold, and down there is a sea anemone. Basically a flower made of jelly. No brain, no eyes, just stuck to a rock.
Got it. The lonely sea anemone.
Now, snap to a high-stakes boardroom in Washington, D.C. You've got the most powerful people on the planet in a full-blown diplomatic standoff over a giant piece of ice in the North Atlantic.
You are painting quite the picture to start us off. That's a serious juxtaposition.
It's the only way I could even begin to describe the stack of briefs we're diving into today.
Right.
We're looking at a world where all the boundaries we thought were solid are just dissolving. We have scientists telling us that these brainless, flower jellies hold the genetic blueprint for the human body.
And at the exact same time, we have geopolitical leaders trying to redraw the map of the Arctic Circle with what feels like a Sharpie.
And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, we've got physicists who are apparently rewriting the first law of thermodynamics.
Which, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be impossible.
I thought that was illegal, like physically illegal.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But I think that's really the theme today, isn't it? We're looking at the fundamental source code of reality, whether that's our biology, the laws of physics, or even international borders, and we're realizing that the rules we thought were set in stone are actually, well, they're open for editing.
So here's the mission for our deep dive today. We are going to unpack these discoveries. We're going to start with that bilateral connection in the sea anemones.
And then we'll get into that rewriting of thermodynamic laws.
From there, the massive moves in space exploration. We've got the Artemis program. We've got more SpaceX drama.
And we absolutely cannot ignore the global stage. We have to talk about what's happening with Greenland, the intense turmoil in Iran, and some very, very strange maneuvering down in Venezuela involving oil and Nobel Prize.
Oh yeah, that one gets weird. But let's start with the biology, because this research, I think it came from Popular Mechanics and Yahoo News. It really, really messed with my head.
I can see why.
I've always thought of sea anemones as just primitive. They're radial, right? They don't have a left side or a right side.
That's the classical view, absolutely. In evolutionary biology, the big dividing line has always been between the bilaterians and everyone else.
Okay, so bilaterians, I think I remember this from high school biology, but give us the quick refresher.
Right, so think of a line of symmetry. You can draw a line down the middle of a human, a dog, even an insect, and you get two mirror images, more or less.
A left and a right.
Exactly, that's bilateral symmetry. And then you have the others, the non-bilaterians, like the Cnidaria family. That includes jellyfish, corals, and our sea anemones.
Where there's no real front or back, just a center point.
Precisely. And the long-held assumption was that our complex bilateral body plan was a major evolutionary leap. It was like a whole new set of genetic instructions had to be written.
Like downloading the Advanced Body Plan DLC.
Exactly. We thought it was a late addition, a special feature, but this new research completely flips that script.
Also,
Scientists analyzed the genetic expression inside these sea anemones, and they found that the specific genetic mechanism that tells human cells where to go, it's already there. And it's active.
the exact same one.
The very same one. It's a signaling pathway called the bone morphogenetic protein pathway, or BMP.
Wait. Bone morphogenetic protein? But they don't have bones.
They don't. It's a bit of a misnomer based on where it was first discovered. But the protein itself isn't about making bones. It's a signaling molecule. It's a messenger.
Okay, so what's the message?
In a human embryo, BMP is like the foreman on a construction site. It's shouting directions, telling the developing cells, this way is the belly, this way is the back. It establishes the entire body's axis.
And the fact that this exact same signaling pathway, this same foreman, is running inside a radially symmetrical, brainless sea creature is, well, it's a paradox.
It is. It's a huge paradox.
So you're saying the code to build a complex two-sided body was already sitting there, just unused, inside a creature that looks like a blob.
Well, it wasn't necessarily unused. It was just being used for a different purpose, to organize its radial body. But yes, the architectural blueprints for a human-style body date back over 600 million years.
Wow.
It totally challenges the idea that these complex body plans evolved independently multiple times. It suggests a shared ancestry that is much deeper and more fundamental than we ever realized.
That is humbling. It's like finding the blueprints for a skyscraper inside a tent.
That's a great way to put it.
But what does this actually mean for us, other than making me feel a strange kinship with a jellyfish?
Well, it has massive implications for biotechnology and for regenerative medicine.
How?
If we understand that this bodybuilding code is a fundamental feature of animal life, not just some human quirk, it opens up entirely new ways to think about repairing the body. We're not trying to hack a proprietary human operating system anymore. We're tapping into the root code of life itself. And if we can learn how the anemone uses that code to regenerate, which they are astonishingly good at, by the way, we might be able to apply some of those principles to human tissue repair.
So we're basically looking for the Restore Factory Settings button, and it turns out the factory is 600 million years old.
In a manner of speaking, yes.
Speaking of root codes, let's pivot to something even older. You flagged this story about asteroid Bennu and a Dr. Stuart Hameroff. This feels less like biology and more like metaphysics.
It is definitely walking a razor's edge between the two. Dr. Hameroff is he's a well-known anesthesiologist and professor who has spent decades studying consciousness.
Right.
He's often associated with the more, let's say, controversial side of the field. And what he's doing now is analyzing samples from NASA.
NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Right, specifically from the OSIRIS-REx mission, which, as you know, brought back actual pieces of the asteroid Bennu.
And Bennu is old. Like, really old.
It's about 4 billion years old. It's a time capsule from the very formation of our solar system.
So what does Hameroff think he found? A tiny brain in the rock?
No, not a brain, nothing like that. He's suggesting that there are molecular structures inside these asteroid samples that are capable of supporting what he calls proto-consciousness.
Okay, you're going to have to unpack proto-consciousness for me. Are you telling me the rock is thinking?
Not thinking in the way that you and I are, deciding what to have for dinner. Hameroff is a major proponent of a theory called ORC-OR, which stands for Orchestrated Objective Reduction.
Okay.
And it posits that consciousness isn't just something that magically switches on when you get enough neurons together in a brain.
The mainstream view.
The mainstream view, yes, the emergent property theory. He argues that consciousness is actually a fundamental quality of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism,
No.
and that it arises from quantum processes happening inside these tiny structures called microtubules.
Microtubules. So his argument is that the hardware, these microtubules, they already existed in the asteroid 4 billion years ago.
Correct. And not just that they existed, but that they had the right geometric structure to potentially support these quantum processes. He's suggesting that the conditions for consciousness, the receiver, for that fundamental signal, if you will, predate life itself.
That sounds suspiciously like panpsychism, the idea that everything has some form of mind.
It circles right up to the edge of it, for sure. And to be very clear, mainstream neuroscience is extremely skeptical of this.
I would imagine so.
The consensus is still that consciousness is an emergent property of complex biological computation in the brain. But Hameroff is saying, look at the geometry of these organic polymers and molecules in the asteroid. They are organized in a way that could support quantum coherence.
It completely changes the question. It goes from how did life create consciousness to how did life learn to tap into the consciousness that was already there?
Precisely. It frames life not as the creator of awareness, but as a vehicle for it, an amplifier.
Which, weirdly enough, connects to that other study you brought up about the collective unconscious.
Yes, the old Jungian idea.
Carl Jung. The theory that we all share a kind of mental library of symbols and archetypes, right?
Exactly. For a very long time, it's been treated as philosophy or mysticism, not science. But this new research is actually trying to bridge that gap with modern neuroscience.
And how are they doing that?
They're looking at how altered states of consciousness, things like deep meditation, or more specifically lucid dreaming, might allow the brain to access information that isn't strictly local.
There was a study mentioned in the briefs, I think from the University of California. They were testing if lucid dreamers, people who are aware that they're dreaming, could predict future events.
Precognition, yes.
Now, that's usually where science draws a very hard line and says, okay, stop.
It is. And the skepticism is absolutely warranted. The standard counter-argument is that what we call precognition is just cognitive bias.
Right, you remember the one time you dreamt of a phone call right before it happened, and you forget the 1,000 times you didn't.
Exactly. But the fact that serious institutions are now designing rigorous protocols to test this, to test if the mind can somehow access information across time, it shows that we're kind of hitting a wall with the standard, purely materialist model of the mind.
We're finding out the box is bigger than we thought it was. Or maybe the walls of the box are just fluid,
That's a good way to look at it.
which is a perfect segue, actually, to our next section. We're rewriting the laws of physics, specifically the first law of thermodynamics.
The golden rule.
Energy cannot be created or destroyed. I can still hear my high school physics teacher saying it. He would be very upset if he heard it was being rewritten.
Well, you can tell him not to worry too much. The first law is still valid. You still can't build a perpetual motion machine. Energy is still conserved.
Okay, so what's the news here then?
What researchers at West Virginia University have done is reevaluate the applicability of the law. It's not that the law was wrong, but that it was too limited.
Explain that. What do you mean limited?
The classical first law was developed in the 19th century, mostly for understanding steam engines.
Right.
And it applies perfectly to what we call ideal systems, closed loops, where everything is predictable and in equilibrium. But the universe is not a steam engine. It's messy.
It is definitely messy.
Yeah.
I can confirm.
We live in what are called non-equilibrium systems, things like ecosystems, the weather, the human body. In these systems, energy doesn't just sit there, it flows. It creates feedback loops. It transforms in all these complex, nonlinear ways.
Okay.
So the researchers developed a new mathematical framework, you can think of it as Thermodynamics 2.0, that actually accounts for this flow and complexity. It's a much more dynamic view of energy.
So the old law was kind of like a map of a city that only showed the main highways.
Hmm?
And this new version shows the alleys, the bike paths, the subway tunnels, all the little ruts energy can take.
Mm-hmm. That is a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
Yes, and it matters immensely because of climate change.
How so?
Our current climate models often have to rely on these simplified ideal system thermodynamic assumptions. If we can use this new, more complex framework, we can model how energy actually moves through the atmosphere and the oceans with much, much higher fidelity.
So it's not just an academic exercise. It's about getting the forecast right when the entire planet is heating up.
Exactly. It allows us to understand the messy reality rather than just the ideal abstraction.
Speaking of messy reality, let's talk about gears. Because gears are the definition of messy. They need grease, they grind, they break. But a team at NYU New York University says they've fixed that,
They have, or at least they think they have. They've developed something they're calling fluid-driven gears.
which sounds like a complete oxymoron. How does that
Yeah.
even work?
It does, right? In a normal gear system, you have rigid teeth interlocking. It's metal on metal that creates friction, heat, wear, and eventually failure.
Broken teeth.
The NYU team has completely replaced those rigid teeth with fluid dynamics. They use the friction and the flow of the fluid itself in the gap between two surfaces to transmit the rotational force.
So the parts, they never actually touch.
Correct. It's a non-contact transmission system.
That seems like it would just slip.
Hmm.
How do you get any torque out of that?
You'd think so, but by very precisely manipulating the properties of the fluid and the size of the gap between the surfaces, they can generate a significant amount of torque, and the benefits are just massive.
Like what?
Well, for starters, no wear and tear, no broken teeth. And because you don't need heavy, hardened steel to withstand all that impact, the machinery can be much, much lighter.
I have to assume the aerospace industry is drooling over this.
Oh, absolutely. Every ounce matters in a rocket or a satellite. If you can replace a heavy steel gearbox with a lightweight fluid drive that literally never jams or breaks, that's a complete game changer for things like Mars rovers or satellite deployment systems.
It really feels like we're moving away from the clanking metal phase of technology into something, I don't know, smoother, more organic.
I think that's right.
Although I don't know if smoother is the word I'd use for the robot with human lips.
The Columbia Engineering Project, yes.
I saw the video. It's deeply unsettling. Why are we doing this?
It is the absolute definition of the uncanny valley, that psychological zone where something looks almost human, but not quite, and it triggers this deep revulsion response.
It triggers the runaway screaming response for me.
I get it. But the goal is actually empathy. The researchers argue that if robots are going to take on more caregiving roles, working in nursing homes, hospitals, or as companions for the elderly,
Right.
they need to be able to communicate non-verbally. And a huge amount of human communication happens through microexpressions around the mouth. A slight smile, a purse of the lips, that conveys a lot.
So a blank metal face saying, "I am sorry for your pain," just doesn't cut it.
Exactly. It feels cold, robotic. They're trying to build a machine that can physically signal empathy in a way that our brains are wired to understand.
But is it actually empathy? Or is it just a very sophisticated simulation designed to trick my brain into trusting a machine?
That is the billion-dollar ethical question, isn't it? And it ties directly into the broader explosion of AI in medicine that we're seeing right now. I mean, just look at a startup like Chai Discovery.
This is the new one.
Yes, and they're partnering with the pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly. We are talking about a $1.3 billion valuation essentially overnight.
And what do?
They're using AI to model drug interactions and discover new chemical compounds at a speed that human chemists just can't possibly match.
Which sounds amazing for curing diseases.
It is. It has incredible potential. But the World Health Organization, the WHO, is already waving a big red flag.
About what?
They're warning about algorithmic bias. If the AI is trained on medical data that primarily comes from, say, white males in Western countries, the drugs it designs might be perfectly optimized for that demographic.
And less effective or even dangerous for everyone else.
Exactly. It's the old garbage in, garbage out problem, but with life or death stakes.
And with AI for mental health, it's got to be even trickier.
It's a minefield. Can an algorithm provide genuine emotional support? Or is it just mirroring your language back at you in a convincing way? If a robot with realistic lips tells you it cares and the AI behind it simulates concern, does it matter that there's no ghost in the machine?
We're right back to the asteroid consciousness question. Maybe the ghost is in the microtubules all along.
Maybe it is.
All right, let's look up from the microscope and grab a telescope. Section 3. Space exploration. It is January 2026, and if you're a space nerd, this is a very, very good month.
It's a genuinely historic month. On January 17th, NASA is rolling out the Artemis II rocket to the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center.
Okay, just to orient everyone, because the timeline for the Artemis program has shifted a few times. Artemis II is the crewed flyby, right? This is the one with astronauts.
Correct. This is the big one. The Space Launch System, the SLS, it's slated to send 4 astronauts on a trip to orbit the moon and then return to Earth.
But they're not landing yet.
No landing on this one. That's of Artemis III. But this is the first time humans will have ventured beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo 17.
Which was in 1972.
1972. It's been over 50 years.
That's about time.
It is. This is a critical pave-the-way mission. They're testing all the crucial systems in deep space, the life support on the Orion capsule, the radiation shielding, the navigation. It's a massive beast of a rocket. And just seeing it roll out to the pad is a tangible sign that we are actually going back.
But while NASA is doing this slow, majestic, government-led rollout, SpaceX seems to be operating in a completely different cadence. Did you see the footage of the Crew 11 return?
The fiery trail over California? Yes, that was spectacular to watch, but also pretty tense behind the scenes.
There's a medical evacuation, wasn't it?
It was. It was the first ever medical evacuation from the International Space Station. We still don't know the specific details. Medical privacy laws still apply, even in orbit. But a situation arose where they had to bring a crew member home immediately.
And they did it safely.
They did, and that proves something absolutely critical for the future of space. As we move towards more commercialization, more tourism, we need to know that we have that ambulance capability. SpaceX just demonstrated under pressure that they can execute a rapid, safe return from the ISS.
It's a capability you hope you never need, but you have to have.
Precisely.
And speaking of SpaceX, they're also busy launching things for the government. The NROL 105 mission just went up.
That's right. For the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office, it really highlights how much the lines have blurred in the last decade. You have the core of the U.S. national security apparatus, the eyes and ears of the state writing to orbit on a privately owned, commercially operated rocket.
The government writes the check, but Elon Musk provides the ride.
That is the new reality of the American space program.
And if we look even further out, beyond our own solar system, astronomers are doing something very cool with what they call cosmic clocks. What's this about pulsars?
Pulsars are incredible objects. They're rotating neutron stars. They are the collapsed cores of massive stars, so dense that a teaspoonful would weigh billions of tons.
Right.
And they spin with mind-boggling precision, sweeping beams of radiation across space like a lighthouse. From our perspective on Earth, we see a pulse, and they are the most accurate clocks in the known universe.
More accurate than our atomic clocks on Earth.
In terms of long-term stability, yes. And what astronomers are doing is creating a galaxy-wide network of these clocks. By timing the arrival of these pulses from pulsars all across the Milky Way, they're trying to detect tiny, tiny variations.
And those variations would be caused by what?
Gravitational waves. The
Ah,
background hum of the universe, the ripples in space-time caused by cataclysmic events like supermassive black holes colliding in distant galaxies billions of light years away.
so they're sharpening these clocks, getting more precise data to hear that hum better.
Exactly. And there's another application, too. The folks at the SETI Institute, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, are also listening very closely.
How does that work?
The idea is that if a very advanced civilization is transmitting a powerful, deliberate signal, or even just using massive amounts of energy in a structured way, it might create a detectable artificial variation in the pulsar timing that stands out against the natural rhythm.
So we're using dead stars to listen for live neighbors. I love that.
It's pretty poetic.
But while we're looking for things out there, we're also finding some very weird stuff right under our feet. Let's talk archaeology. This story out of Kazakhstan is wild.
The Akmola region, yeah.
So a group of firefighters were just on patrol. That's how this started.
Just a routine patrol, apparently.
Mm.
And they stumbled upon a massive stone carving of a human face just jutting out of the earth.
Sitting there. For how long?
It's been dated back to the Bronze Age, so thousands of years. And what's really significant here isn't just that it's a cool statue. It's about how it changes our understanding of the Eurasian steppe.
How so?
We often think of that vast region in Central Asia as a sort of ancient highway. You know, nomads moving through, armies marching back and forth, but not a place where people really settled down and built things.
The flyover country of the ancient world.
Exactly. But a massive permanent stone carving like this implies, well, permanence. It implies a settled culture, artistic traditions, probably ceremonial sites. It suggests that the steppe wasn't just a corridor. For some people, it was a destination.
History hiding in plain sight. I love that. And speaking of history that people really, really want to find, Turkey, Noah's Ark.
The eternal headline.
It feels like every few years, someone claims they found it. What's different this time?
It's the technology they're using. This time, the claims are based on ground-penetrating radar scans near Mount Ararat. A group of researchers says they found what look like man-made structures under the surface.
And the kicker is?
The kicker is that the dimensions of these alleged structures seem to match the specific dimensions the cubits described for the Ark in the Book of Genesis.
So they found a boat shape.
A boat shape of the right size, yes. Now, we have to be incredibly careful here. Finding a boat-shaped formation in the geology, or even what look like man-made walls, does not automatically verify a specific biblical narrative. Geology can do very strange things.
Of course.
But it fuels this fascinating and often contentious intersection where faith and archaeology collide. People want the science to validate the story they believe in.
It definitely gets people clicking, that's for sure. But you know what else gets people clicking?
I have a feeling I know where you're going.
The President of the United States trying to buy an island. Let's move to geopolitics.
The Greenland Saga, Part 2.
It really feels like a throwback, but it is very, very real. It's January 2026. President Trump's in the White House, and he has decided once again that the United States needs to control Greenland.
And unlike his previous term, where it was floated as more of an idea, this time he is applying serious pressure.
The reports are saying he's threatening tariffs on countries that don't go along with the plan.
Yes, specifically European allies. He's not being subtle about it. He has explicitly mentioned his past history of threatening pharmaceutical tariffs on Europe as a form of leverage to show that he's serious. He's using economic warfare to try and force a territorial acquisition.
And what's the word from Europe? I mean, from Denmark specifically first.
Not good. Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, has been very firm, very public, that Greenland is part of the Danish realm and is not for sale. The people of Greenland themselves have also indicated they prefer their current affiliation.
But it's spreading beyond just a U.S.-Denmark issue.
Oh, absolutely. The rest of the EU is getting involved. The French finance minister, Roland Lescure, publicly warned the U.S. not to cross certain diplomatic lines, and he pointedly reminded Washington of the tight economic ties within the European Union.
And the German polls you flagged.
That was a really striking number. A recent poll showed that 78% of Germans now see President Trump's policies as a direct threat to the stability of NATO.
NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Right. The cornerstone of transatlantic security for 75 years.
So why? Why does he want this giant ice block so badly? Is it just for the Trump Tower nuke branding opportunity?
No, it's much more strategic than that. There are two main drivers. First, it's about what is under the ice.
Resources.
As Greenland's ice sheet melts, which is, of course, a tragedy for the climate, it's revealing what are believed to be massive deposits of rare earth minerals.
The stuff we need for all our tech. For chips, batteries, the whole AI revolution.
Exactly. And right now, China completely dominates that global supply chain. The U.S. sees controlling Greenland's resources as a way to break that dependence. It's a national security issue.
And the second reason?
Good old-fashioned military positioning.
Yeah.
It's about the GI-UK gap, the Greenland-Iceland-United Kingdom gap.
The naval choke point.
It's a critical naval choke point for monitoring Russian submarines entering the open Atlantic from their northern bases. Controlling Greenland gives the U.S. military unparalleled surveillance and control over the North Atlantic.
So it's resources and national security. But the cost? Some of the analysis suggests this could be the end of NATO as we know it. How?
Think about the precedent it sets. NATO is built on the concept of mutual defense and the absolute sovereignty of its member states. If the leading member of the alliance, the United States, can effectively bully and threaten a smaller ally into giving up its territory,
The trust is gone.
the trust completely evaporates. Why would any smaller nation feel secure? If you can annex your friends, you don't really have friends anymore, you have subjects. It fundamentally breaks the alliance.
That is a chilling thought. And speaking of strained relationships, let's look at the other global hotspots, because Iran is in absolute turmoil.
Turmoil is putting it lightly. We are seeing widespread anti-regime demonstrations across the country. They started over economic grievances but have morphed into calls for the government to fall.
And the death toll is high.
The human rights activists' news agency is reporting over 2,600 deaths in the crackdowns. It's a staggering number.
And the regime has cut the internet.
A massive blackout affecting an estimated 90 million people. It's a classic authoritarian move.
Totally.
Strangle the flow of information to try and kill the protests in the dark. We are just starting to see a phased rollback with some text messaging services being restored.
But then there's this curveball.
Yeah.
President Trump publicly thanked the Iranian regime.
Yeah, that confused everyone.
Thanked them while they're killing protesters and shutting down the internet. For what?
He praised them for halting the execution of 800 specific protesters. It was a very strange, very transactional, diplomatic signal. It was essentially, you gave me this one thing that I can point to, so I will praise you for it, while completely ignoring the broader context of the brutal crackdown.
That has to be incredibly confusing for the opposition on the ground.
Yeah.
You have figures like Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince, calling for the toppling of the Revolutionary Guards, and then the U.S. president sends a thank you note to the regime they're fighting.
It creates a vacuum of leadership and a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a similar kind of power vacuum playing out in Venezuela.
Right. So the latest there is that the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, is claiming a mandate to lead. This is after the reported U.S. seizure of President Maduro.
The power structure there has effectively collapsed. And into that void, you have the CIA director, William Burns, meeting with the interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez. The official line is that they're discussing opportunities.
And by opportunities, we can probably assume they mean oil.
It's almost certainly about oil. And if you want proof, just look who got the first contract to sell the seized Venezuelan oil.
Who was it?
A firm called Vitol, which it turns out has been linked to a major donor to the Trump campaign.
Well, the dots connect themselves sometimes.
They do. It feels like a return to a very 19th century style of foreign policy. To the victor go the spoils.
And on top of all that, there was that bizarre story about Machado giving her Nobel Prize medal to Trump.
Yes, that was surreal. She physically handed him the medal as a gesture. The Nobel Institute in Oslo actually had to issue a public clarification.
What did they say?
They basically said, the honor remains with the person who won it, not whoever happens to be holding the piece of gold. It was a truly surreal moment of political theater.
Okay, before we leave the global stage, we have to touch on Ukraine. There is maybe a tiny glimmer of de-escalation.
A very localized one. A ceasefire has been announced, but only in the immediate vicinity of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
And this is to allow the IAEA to get in and do repairs.
Yes, the International Atomic Energy Agency. It seems to be a pragmatic recognition by both Russia and Ukraine that a nuclear meltdown in the middle of the war zone helps absolutely no one.
But we shouldn't mistake this for a step towards peace.
Not at all. In fact, President Zelensky is warning that Ukraine's air defense supplies are critically low. He said just last week that some of their most important systems were left completely without missiles until a new shipment arrived on Friday.
They're living hand-to-mouth with air defense. That's a terrifying position to be in.
It is. And their neighbors are reacting to that insecurity. Poland just announced they're withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention.
That's the International Landmine Ban Treaty, isn't it?
It is. Poland plans to mass-produce anti-personnel landmines to fortify their border with Russia and Belarus as part of a new defensive line they're calling the East Shield.
Wow. Bringing landmines back into mass production in Europe, that feels like a massive step backward for humanity.
It's a grim sign of how desperate the security architecture in Eastern Europe has become. When you no longer trust treaties and alliances, you build walls and you bury mines.
All right, let's bring it home from the battlefield to the economy. Section 7. This is what you're calling the energy wars, and it ties right back to that AI boom we talked about earlier.
This is the hidden war. We talk all the time about the battle for microchips, but we don't talk enough about the battle for electricity. China's electricity consumption surged by 5% last year alone. And that was driven largely by two things: AI data centers and charging their massive fleet of electric vehicles.
And they're investing to keep up.
They are investing 4 trillion yuan into upgrading and expanding their national grid.
And how is the U.S. doing in comparison?
Tech leaders here are terrified. They are openly worried that the U.S. grid simply cannot handle the coming AI load. We don't have the generation capacity, and our transmission infrastructure is old.
So what's the plan? What's the administration's solution?
Well, President Trump's plan is unconventional. He is reportedly asking the tech giants themselves, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, to buy $15 billion worth of power plants.
To buy the plants. Not just the power, but the actual plants.
The actual power plants. The idea is basically, if you want the power for your AI, you need to secure the generation. It's a forced mobilization of private capital to solve what is traditionally a public infrastructure problem.
That creates a world where Amazon doesn't just own the server your data is on. They own the power plant that's feeding it.
It's vertical integration on steroids.
Speaking of investments, the president himself is making some moves. He bought $1 million in Netflix and Warner Bros. Discovery bonds.
He did. And the timing was interesting. It was right after their major merger was announced.
That feels like a conflict of interest waiting to happen.
It certainly raises questions about a president trading in companies that his administration will have regulatory oversight on.
But looking at the broader market, beyond specific stocks, where are the big strategists telling people to look?
It's interesting. Despite all the geopolitical chaos we just discussed, the situations in Iran, Venezuela, Ukraine, a lot of big investment banks are pointing towards emerging markets as the big opportunity right now.
Really? Why?
They see more potential for growth in the developing world compared to the risk of stagnation or recession in some of the more established Western markets.
So, high risk, but potentially high reward.
It's always the trade-off.
And for the regular person who's not playing the emerging markets, but just trying to, get by.
Rackspace raised their email hosting prices.
And the customer backlash was apparently devastating.
It was. It's actually a funny reminder that while presidents are fighting over Greenland and billionaires are buying power plants, sometimes the thing that actually ruins your week is your email bill going up by $5.
Ain't that the truth? So, okay, let's try to synthesize all of this. We started this deep dive at the bottom of the ocean.
We did, with the sea anemone. And we saw that the biological blueprints of life, the very code that makes us bilateral beings, is ancient and shared with some of the simplest creatures on Earth.
From there, we learned that the laws of physics, specifically thermodynamics, aren't as rigid as we thought. They're being rewritten to account for the messy, complex, real world that we actually live in.
And then we looked at the map, at Greenland, at Iran, at Venezuela, at Ukraine's borders.
And we saw that the political boundaries we think of as solid and permanent are just as fluid as those gear systems at NYU. Borders are being challenged, alliances are being tested.
And resources, whether it's rare earth minerals under the ice or just simple electricity for AI, are driving so much of the conflict.
It honestly feels like everything is up for negotiation right now. The definition of a law of physics, the definition of a border, even the very definition of consciousness.
I think that's the key takeaway. We tend to think of the world as a stable place. We assume biology is settled, physics is settled, and the map is settled. And today's deep dive proves that stability is largely an illusion. Everything is always subject to reevaluation.
Which brings me to one final, slightly provocative thought to leave you with. We talked about biological blueprints and rewriting physics. But there was one more story in the stack from the Washington Post about the microplastics debate.
Ah, yes. The plastic people theory.
Scientists are arguing fiercely over the validity of recent studies. Are microplastics actually infiltrating our vital organs? Some say the data is flawed and it's causing a panic. Others say it's a genuine unfolding health crisis. But here's the question I'm left with.
Go on.
If we accept that our environment fundamentally influences our biology, like the anemone using its ancient genetic code to adapt, what happens when our environment becomes fundamentally synthetic?
If we are, in fact, slowly becoming 1% plastic, does that change the blueprint? Are we evolving in a new direction, or are we simply degrading?
And if we're already rewriting the laws of physics, maybe the next step is rewriting the very definition of human to include a little bit of polyester.
That is a terrifying thought to end on.
That's what we do here. We dive deep. Thanks for listening.
Take care, everyone.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.